provide a week of live demonstrations and a bundle of Valentine's Day inspired patterns and recipes. We want to make sure you download yours. Those free patterns and recipes are located by clicking the link in the description of this event. Every day this week, a new instructor is going to be streaming live as they quilt, sew, knit, and bake, and they will be providing step-by-step demonstrations for these cute projects, perfect for gifting to your loved ones this Valentine's Day. If you have any questions at all during the event, that is what I am here for, so please leave your comments in the blue chat box below or in the chat on Facebook and YouTube. I will be monitoring the questions and comments during the entire event, and I'll feed them to our instructor, as many as I can through the duration. So today, we are ready to start with our master pastry chef. Her name is Colette Christian. Hello, Colette. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and what we're making today.
Well, hi, Leah. Hi, audience. It's great to see you. We are making a heart-shaped macaron today. I teach regular macarons in a class called French Miniature Desserts, but the chocolate macaron is tricky because we have to add cocoa, and cocoa is an ingredient that tends to affect the other ingredients around or all around it. So you have a recipe available to download that will work perfectly and make a delicious chocolate macaron. So first, before we start those questions, I'm going to do a quick demo and refresh your memories on how to make macaron almost effortlessly. And so let's get started. Please forgive the noise of the mixer. It might get a little noisy, but I promise it won't take long. In the mixer, I'm putting egg whites, and your egg whites must be free of any egg yolk because otherwise they won't whip up properly, and then a pinch of cream of tartar. Now, if you don't have cream of tartar, still make your macarons, that our egg whites will foam up nicely. We're going to start on medium speed. And actually, I'm going to stop and show you a genius hack for when you are whipping small amounts of egg whites, whole eggs, or egg yolks. This can only be done with the whisk attachment. So, and again, I'm doing a half recipe, and you have that half recipe in your course in the webinar materials. I'm going to lift up and unhook the whisk. The head of the mixer is holding it in place. And now we have made contact. So on to medium speed. I'm taking it till it looks like cappuccino foam, and then I'm going to rain in the granulated sugar. So let's take a good look at what cappuccino foam looks like. And I did grab the whisk attachment. You guys can hopefully see it right there. It's no longer, the egg whites are no longer liquidy.
Now, Colette, we have a question. There was a bit of a sound jump when you were explaining what to use. If you don't have the cream of tartar, what do you suggest using? We missed that.
Nothing. Just leave it out. And I'll explain a little bit about cream of tartar science when we're deep in our questions. So hold on to that thought because it's fascinating. All right, so now back to medium speed. We are at cappuccino foam, and I'm going to just tap in the sugar, everyone. once the sugar is in, we're going to medium-high speed, and I have reattached the whisk attachment. If you're doing the full recipe, you won't have to drop the whisk. That's what we call that. Okay, medium-high. So our next check, we want it to be soft, but still shiny. And if you were going to add color or a little flavoring, like a few drops of vanilla extract or chocolate extract, those are optional. You would add it now. If you added, like, let's say, for example, a Christmas red gel color, you would get a red velvet macaron, which could be super cool for Valentine's Day. So this is the stage at which we would add flavor and color. I'm not doing that. It's still soft and shiny. Now, next stage, high speed, we're going for firm peaks.
Colette, I'm going to slide in a question for you here because we have
Sure, go for it.
A couple people are curious about the temperatures of what you're using. So the bowl and the ingredients, are they cold, room temperature? How would you describe what you're using?
Everything is room temperature. Excellent question. If your egg whites are cold from the refrigerator, they will eventually whip up. It just will take a little bit longer. Now, everyone, before COVID, I taught macaron classes on ground nearly every weekend, and then of course on Craftsy. And so students would always ask, when are my egg whites ready? And this whole mystery about peak, soft peak, firm peak, medium peak, stiff peak. So let me show you how we're going to test. We're going to test because we don't want to over whip these and we don't want to under whip these. So welcome to the Goldilocks School of Baking, because that's where we are. You're going to tap off the excess off the whisk and just gently dip it into the meringue and bring it straight up and down. Now, the peak is pretty, but it doesn't really show us anything. And those of you who have taken the class know exactly what I'm going to say next. It's the angle of the peak that gives us the information we need about soft peak, stiff peak, medium peak, firm peak. Okay. And this can also go for cream as well. When you're looking for a soft peak, the angle of the peak is at 10 o'clock.
And Colette, can you actually slide that to your side camera so we can get a little close up of that?
Oh, great. Perfect. Oh,
Thank
can
you.
you see that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So what I'm talking about is this right here, the angle of the peak. So a soft peak, that angle is at 10 o'clock. A medium peak, the angle is at 11. The firm peak, the angle is at 11:30, and stiff peak, which we don't use that often, but sometimes we do, is it's straight up and down. You might use a stiff peak for a pavlova or a chiffon cake or an angel food cake. So what do we want for macarons? Firm peak, 11:30. So what if you look at it and you're like, I just don't see it. When you don't see it, just pinch the peak away. Now, honestly, I know you're all going to tell me, and you can put it in the chat, that's at 11 o'clock. So I'm going to put it back on the mixer for about 15 more seconds, and we'll do another check. I don't know who decided way back when to talk about peaks, but that angle is where you're getting your best information. So we're close, and if I went with this, we'd probably be okay, but let's do it right. And when I stare down the mixer bowl, I am also looking, the mixture will get less shiny, and then you'll be able to see the lines of the whisk more defined on the surface. And be careful of this, you guys. If you take a big old blob of meringue, it will tell you nothing. So knock off the excess, and we're going to try again. Ooh, that's fabulous. Wouldn't you all agree that's a perfect 11:30? All right, so now knock that, we need every bit of meringue, so I knocked off the excess. You guys bear with me.
I'm actually going to take a moment to interrupt you, Colette. There are a couple people that I believe are just so I'm going to take a moment just to remind you, if for some reason you have not gotten your recipe just yet, there is a link in the description that you can click on and access all of your free recipes and things that we're using so that you can check out what Colette is working from. So these are chocolate macarons, and we are just working on the stiff peaks if you're just joining us here. And then I'm going to have Colette remind us exactly why and when she was dropping and reattaching the whisk for those of you that are wondering what the purpose was for that as well.
Excellent. The reason for that is because I was doing a half recipe of macarons and only working with 2 ounces in grams, that would be 57 grams of egg white. My whisk was not making full contact with the egg whites. So what I did is I dropped the head of the mixer and just with the mixer off, of course, lift up the attachment so it disengages from the clip and drops down and makes full contact. Now, I must be very clear, this only works with the whisk attachment because the bowl is stainless steel and the whisk is stainless steel. So even though there's a little bit of friction, there's no metal reaction. The other attachments are made of aluminum, so we don't drop them when we're doing small batches.
Awesome. And there is in the chat box now a quick link to the recipe if you are one of the people watching that was wondering where you could find that. Thank you to our friends working behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Oh, making this all possible. Now, you may have noticed that I transferred the meringue out of the KitchenAid bowls and into a fairly wide, medium-sized bowl. If I was doing the full recipe, this bowl would be larger. We need surface area to fold properly. And this not only goes for macarons, but it also goes for the rest of our baking as well. And the KitchenAid bowl for macarons is just a little too high to really, really practice proper folding technique. And when I say that, I feel like I'm 1,000 years old, because this folding technique kind of dates back to the days of Julia Child when she was teaching on PBS. So now the meringue is in the bowl. I'm going to shake in 1/3 of my dry ingredients. And what are these? This is the almond meal, the powdered sugar, and the cocoa powder that I whirled in this little guy. Just a food processor is all you need. And if you do this, and the instructions are in the recipe, there is no need to sift. I never sift, audience. Not for macarons. For other things, yes, but not for macarons. Okay, so now, for proper folding technique, the curved side of the spatula is facing the bottom of is next to the bottom of the bowl. We're going to slice through the center, and my hand goes up to the top of the bowl. And as I slice to the bottom of the bowl, I give it a turn, like a 180 turn. I've always been terrible with those degree things, but I spin it. And what we want to avoid, is stirring. That's what we want to avoid. So we're just gently folding in our dry ingredients without losing volume. There's nothing wrong with stirring. We need to stir when we cook, but when we're baking, we want to fold. Now, once that dry disappears, and it's okay to have a little dry on the sides, don't worry, I'll clean it up later. Then we're going to go with our next third. Okay? And again, just, and there's no race here. You just.
Colette, while you're folding, can I slide in a few
Yes.
questions about the almond flour? We
Sure.
have one viewer who's curious if there are some allergy alternatives, if someone has an almond allergy. And somebody else is wondering, what is the difference between almond meal and almond flour?
Great question. Let's take that latter one first.
Okay.
Leah, almond meal and almond flour are exactly the same thing. It's marketing that they call it almond flour. It sounds better. Almond meal is really not very sexy. So, but what I don't like about it, what I've always found irritating, is that if we say almond flour or hazelnut flour, it sounds like there's wheat in it. And if you're looking to be gluten-free, that's a problem. But they are exactly the same thing, just ground up almonds. All right, so you guys can see that all the dry ingredients in the meringue, they are combined. And Leah, I have not forgotten your question. So before I start this next process, I'm going to answer that question. You could make macarons with 100% hazelnut meal, pistachio. I wrote a book on macarons called Mastering Macarons, Classic to Contemporary Techniques. And there's a chapter on alternative nut macarons. Pumpkin seeds crushed up work really well. Sunflower seeds work really well. They actually it's a delicious macaron. So that's a way to avoid the almonds. However, almonds are the driest nut in the universe of nuts. So sometimes when we make 100% hazelnut macaron, you might get little oil spots on the surface of your shell because they're just naturally oily nuts. There's a reason why we don't see a lot of macadamia nut macarons or cashew macarons, because those nuts are so high in oil that they pose a problem for our shell is not pretty. It's kind of got little drops of oil under the surface.
And now this recipe that we're working on today, is this a gluten-free recipe?
Yes, macarons are naturally gluten-free. Now, I just want to interject, I'm starting to paint the batter up the side of the bowl. And the difference with cocoa powder tightens. Cocoa is a dryer. And what cocoa powder does is you can see that it's different. If you've made macarons, you see it's a little tighter. So this stage, we are knocking air out of the macarons. I call this painting and scraping. And I paint the batter up the side of the bowl, not too far to flatten it out, but just enough so that, and what I'm looking for it to do is just become slightly elastic. Now, in the case of regular macarons, it takes between 3 and 6 painting and scrapings to get it just to relax a little bit. In the case of the chocolate ones, it usually takes the full 6. But don't count. I want you to look for it to kind of constrict back on itself. We're almost there. Okay. Now, I couldn't just, oh, there it goes. If you guys can see it beginning to move a little bit, I'm going to do one more, and then we will be ready to pipe. So that's the thing with cocoa. I mean, I had many students who just took the regular macaron recipe from class and added cocoa powder, and they didn't work. And that's because of, cocoa can just menace the other ingredients and dry them out. So I had to come up with a specific formula for chocolate macarons. All right, I just want to make sure you guys can see it moving. See it moving there? Slowly sliding down. Now I have, let me just wipe my hands a little bit, you guys. We're getting chocolatey here. I have a piping bag set up in this measuring cup. And because we are doing a specialty shape, I am using an 803 tip for a little bit more detail. Now, normally, we'd recommend an 804 or the Wilton number 12. Also works very well. I mean, you would be fine with an 804, a 12, or an 803, but normally when you see those very creative, oh my God, corgi macarons, all like the crazy shaped macarons, you want a slightly finer tip for that extra detail. Now I'm going to try not to make a mess, but I am going to get my batter, and you'll notice that it's tighter, a little bit tighter than normal, but that's the cocoa powder. And you want to use a Dutch processed cocoa. And I'm really happy to tell you that Hershey's special dark cocoa has been working very well for me. Valrhona also makes an amazing cocoa called Poudre de Cacao. All right, I want you guys to see this. It's never fun to have batter coming out the top of your piping bag. So we're going to scrape down the batter. And also for macarons, use at least an 18-inch bag, because the smaller 12-inch bags that we use for cake decorating, they don't, they're harder to control. All right, so there we go.
Can I slide in a quick question here, Colette?
Always.
All right, this one comes from Christy. If you don't have a scale for grams, how many large eggs would you be using for this recipe?
Well, the average large egg in the United States, the egg white weighs 1.1 ounces. So it would be, for the full recipe, it would be 4. But please, you guys, for consistency and accuracy, if you don't have a scale for grams, put one on your Valentine's Day list. It really makes a difference in your baking. So you would use, for the full recipe, 2 large egg whites. For the half recipe, 2 large egg whites. And by the way, we separate our eggs when they're cold and then let the egg whites warm up to room temperature before beginning to make your meringue for your macarons. They'll still work when they're cold, so if you run out of time, it's okay. But they do, they're quicker when they're warmer. They whip up quicker when they're warmer. All right, everybody. Now we're going to begin to pipe. And hold on one second. Seems to be a little rogue cocoa powder on my parchment paper. One thing that does, usually I start, and I hope you can all see this, I'm piping just inside the lines. And then the trick to this is not to lift the bag. And you want a little bit of drama, a little bit of, as you are coming in and creating your heart.
Colette, can you slide the tray to, I believe, your left so we can see the full tray? Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Sure. All right, so I just want to make sure you can see this. That one got a little messed up, but that's okay. So watch. Look at that beautiful loop. Come down to the point, then come here and around, and just gently squeeze and fill in any bare spots without lifting, slide off, okay? Come around. I don't know about you guys, but I could be very happy piping all day long.
And you let me know if you're ready for a few substitution questions too. We've got a couple that I'm holding in my back pocket that have come in.
Oh, nice.
Oh, I lost you for a second there. Are you ready for some
Go
questions?
ahead.
All right, good. First of all,
Yeah,
we've got
fire away.
a few questions coming in, but the most recent one from Darlene about using hazelnut meal. I know you mentioned that it's possible. Could you use hazelnut meal for this particular recipe?
Yes, you absolutely can, but hazel, you want to use half almond and half hazelnut meal. And what will happen is the almond flour will dry up any excess oil from the hazelnuts. And so that's when we do, unless we have an almond allergy, what we want to do when we do a different nut flavor, it's half the nut that, whoops, sorry you guys. It's half the nut, this is gonna sound crazy, but like the boutique nut, like hazelnut, and then half almond. So that's what you would wanna do. So like for this recipe, it would be, it's 4 ounces of almond meal, 2 hazelnut, 2 almond. All right, now for the best part. I don't want to make a big noise and hurt your ears, but once they're piped, you're going to slam the tray down 4 times. You want to be 6 inches off the surface. You want to make sure your hands are clear so you don't slam them, and your thumbs are holding the parchment paper. Leah, I'll do 1, okay?
Okay.
Everybody's warned. You have to really smack them, you guys. You can't do this. Don't be polite. If you got somebody napping, wait, all right? That would be 4 good slams. It's actually very satisfying if you're feeling like, you know, you want to get some stuff out. Anyhow, all right. Now, in my kitchen, I really can't go too much further with these, except we would set them up to dry, and they tend to take, depending where you live, anywhere from 25 to 40 minutes. Now, one thing about macarons, you guys, never dry them more than an hour. After an hour, the sugar begins to react in the batter and actually begin to break down and liquefy slightly. So that's too long. If you live in a very humid climate, get a small oscillating fan and put that nearby to help them along. All right, so last thing before I start taking questions, here are some finished macarons, which I painted with luster dust. And this is what the ganache should look like. It should look like Nutella. And by the way, Nutella is a great filling for macarons, especially if you want to ship them to friends and family or loved ones. Nutella is shelf stable and can definitely, nothing's gonna happen. They'll be food safe. We have to be careful with some of our fillings, you guys, but Nutella is, for hazelnut macarons, Nutella would be excellent. All right, that's the consistency you're looking for before you start filling your macarons. All right, Leah, I'm ready for questions.
All right, we've got a few here. Another substitution question. This one's for sugar. Could you make these with powdered cup for cup stevia?
I'm going to answer honestly. I really don't work with a lot with alternative sugars, and I have a deep and profound respect for their websites because they hire experts to craft their recipes. So I would say go to the stevia website and see if there is a recipe for macarons on there. Stevia is 400 or 600 times sweeter than sugar. It would be, and the texture is the granules are finer. So I don't know. I'm kind of wincing at that one. I'm not quite sure if that's possible. Macarons are sweet, you guys. Sugar really is their base. Next.
All right, we'll move on to the almond flour. Niurka, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name incorrectly. Niurka is asking, can you freeze almond flour? And if so, how long can you do that for?
Oh, it'll stay great for about a year. You don't have to worry. A year in the freezer is fine. And then just take it out and let it warm up before you use it because it tends to freeze and kind of clump. But almond, and it should be actually, any nuts should be stored in the freezer that you bake with, because most of the nuts that we buy, if we're lucky, they were harvested 6 months ago, but a lot of them, that crop is even months out beyond that 6-month point. Excellent question.
And let's try to get 2 more in. Ooh, this is kind of a tag on, but I've seen a couple people interested in this. The latest one comes in from Flame Spirit 3. Can you use less sugar? We do have some viewers that are asking if there are ways to make macarons less sweet.
You know, I get this question a lot, and honestly, they're based on sugar. They've been always based on sugar. You will lose your feet if you reduce the sugar too much. I have had in the book that I was talking about, and I think we have the link to it, I did create a savory macaron. So I had to reduce the sugar quite a bit in order for it to support savory fillings. And their feet, no drama on those feet. They were okay. So that's a long-winded answer to say you can take about 21 grams out of the powdered sugar for the full recipe and about 14 grams of granulated out of the granulated sugar and still get decent feet. What I really recommend is make your filling less sweet, and then it'll balance out the sweetness. Like maybe fill them with a beautiful lemon curd, or for example, I flavored this ganache with raspberry, a little bit of raspberry to make it less sweet. You could use a more bitter chocolate in your filling, and that would counteract that sweetness of the macaron. The macaron dates back to the 1500s, you guys, and it was really all about, it started out as a very sweet treat for royalty. So yeah.
All right, let's
Next.
have one last question in this chunk before we move on. This one comes in from Caroline. My problem with macarons has always been during the macaronage, I'm guessing, stage. The description of until it flows like lava doesn't really do it for Caroline. So do you have any suggestions for her and anybody else that's struggling with that stage?
Yes, because I've been struggling with that descriptor for years. I'm always looking for a good word. So look for it to become, and I apologize because the cocoa wasn't a great way to show you this. But for the regular macarons, it should look elastic. It should look a little bit like it's constricting slightly, and I think elastic is the best word. It's not just sitting there. You can see it you just see it move and tighten up. God, I hope that helps. Let me know.
All right. And I am, for anybody else that's been feeding questions in, I'm watching them come in, and I will get to as many as possible the next time that Colette has a little pause for some more questions. So let's keep them coming. I'll send it back to you, Colette, for the next steps.
Okay. All right. So now what we're doing, we're just waiting for them to dry. And once they're dry, so this is also kind of a misnomer, you guys. Couple myths we're going to blow out of the water right now. What we're looking for is they're going to go from shiny to dull. And once they look dull, then again, depending on where you live, it can be anywhere from 25 to 45 altitude. You get the original class was filmed in Denver, and they actually were dull in about 17 minutes. I live in Los Angeles, and they usually take between 35 and 40 minutes here in LA. We're far just right, just to blow a little bit of air over the surface. So right now we're kind of playing a waiting game with these. They may not be ready by the time our webinar is over, But basically I have these finished macarons here, and these are baked, so their surface is a little bit different, but we're looking for the shine to completely go away, and there's no need to touch them. I know there's many bloggers and you know, people on YouTube will say, touch them. Well, once you touch them, you've ruined that one. Touch them till they're no longer tacky. That really makes me crazy. Just do it visually, set a timer so you know, okay, they've been drying for 30 minutes, and then take a look, you know, and also make notes on the recipe, how long they're taking. So when you make your next batches, you'll go, okay, you know, 25, 35 minutes. If it's you live in a super humid climate, there's really, you can always make these.
Now there's a question that has come in about your
I'll take questions, Leah.
Yeah. The first one here is about the template that you have underneath that you used for piping. Do you keep it under the parchment while it's drying, or do you remove that?
No need to remove it. We're going to bake these macarons at 325 degrees. Paper burns at 451. So these won't burn. The parchment paper's fine. And I'll reuse the template. So it is out aired, but I keep my templates and I use them over and over and over. I've got a shamrock, I've got the hearts, always trying to find fun stuff. So we're doing some different things with our macarons.
All right, and we had a few people asking a similar
Next question.
I'm going to go into Jennifer's. Hers was the most recent that I'm seeing, and it's all about toasting the nuts. So we did have a question earlier about using macadamia flour. Would toasting the nuts, either the flour itself, or Jennifer is asking about toasting the nuts before, to first help with any of the oils before as making your own flour?
The great question. The manufacturer has already toasted them. That's why it's always better to buy almond meal than to make your own, because they have dried out the nuts before processing. That's part of the processing. Great question. We don't always get to say that. Excellent.
Amazing. Oh, a very quick one here from Vicky. Can you freeze buttermilk?
Actually, yes. Now, there's not a universal press release on that. You know, different people will say different things, but I have been able to do it, and it separates, you know, and then when you thaw it, you just shake it up again, and it comes right back. However, if you want another option instead of freezing buttermilk, depending on what you're making, is the buttermilk powder that's available. That works really, really well. I don't know if anybody's tried that, but I find that to be a very good product if you don't want to have buttermilk in your if you have limited freezer capacity, or you don't want to buy buttermilk.
There is a lot of interest in hearing more about your little teaser from the very beginning of our webinar about why you don't necessarily need to replace cream of tartar if you do not have it. So if you would like to speak on that, I know there are quite a few viewers out there that are interested.
My favorite story ever is about cream of tartar. So, okay. So cream of tartar is a bake shop acid, or a bake shop salt. It's a derivative of tartaric acid, and which is derived from the sides of wine barrels. And well, now it's made, but way back in the day, they discovered that the residue left from the side of wine barrels, put in a little bit of egg whites, especially when it's 1733 and you're whipping by hand and you're tired, that, wow, that made the egg whites whip up to more volume more quickly. If you don't have it, they will work. And we don't use it for every application when whipping egg whites. But it's really useful in something like the macarons, where it's a baked meringue. You guys bear with me quickly. Okay, you ready? Ready?
We are ready.
Right.
Go.
So what the cream of tartar is, okay. So the cream of tartar acts like a bouncer in a club. There are hydrogen and sulfur ions on the surface of the egg whites. And what we want to encourage is the hydrogen ions to bond. And when they bond, as the egg white protein is denaturing and wrapping around the air bubbles that the mixer is creating, then it's a smooth join. The sulfur ions, which are chemically the same if they get in, they create a jagged join. So our egg whites the meringue is a little compromised. So, but not enough to really make a difference with what we're doing. That's just the science. So what cream of tartar does, I said it was like a bouncer at a club. It pushes back the sulfur ions so the hydrogen ions can walk the red carpet, get in there, create a beautiful join on that, where those egg white proteins are wrapping around that air bubble, and we have a beautiful, efficient meringue. Ha!
Awesome. I've got another question for you if you have a moment for it. Carrie asked, but a couple other people were curious as well. Do you need to be using a metal bowl? So you used one for your mixer and you used one to fold.
For the macaronage, which I call painting and scraping, but it is macaronage, any bowl, ceramic, plastic, glass, stainless steel, doesn't matter at all. Just make sure that you have decent surface area. I taught for many years in culinary school, and I would notice that students would grab smaller bowls, but that would have to be corrected. We need surface area for folding. All right, great question. Keep them coming, Leah.
Well, first I wanted to ask you, do you have any other directions? We are nearing the end of our time here that you want to share and make sure that we get in and on camera for our viewers today.
I'm a little limited because of my kitchen to get them on camera, because I'm going to be honest, I can't open the oven door because it's behind me. But what's going to happen, I have these on the other camera so you guys can see them in real time going from shiny to dull. Your oven is going to be preheated at 325 degrees. The first tray of macarons that you bake, I recommend checking in 9 minutes. On average, at this size, it takes 8 minutes for the foot to set. If we open the oven door too quickly, we're going to drop that temperature and we won't get our foot. This cookie is leavened only by steam, so we have to be mindful of that. So you're going to check in 9 minutes. And the way we check is take the tray out of the oven. Don't check with the oven door open because you'll lose too much heat. And then you're going to just see if the top of the macaron right here, if it's stable, then you're close. If it moves back and forth, and you can see me do this in the Craftsy class, French miniature desserts, then we need 2 to 3 more minutes. Rarely do macarons at this size take longer than 14 minutes at 325 degrees. If you have a convection oven, because I feel like I hear that question coming, you may use your convection, but drop the temperature to 300 degrees. And also, you guys, you know your ovens. If your oven runs hot, adjust. If your oven runs low, adjust. Okay?
All right, and any tips for assembling the macarons? So to finish the completed product so that they're all put together, do you have anything you'd like to share, tips and tricks? How are we going to get that finished product to look so beautiful?
You don't have to wait long. They're so full of air, they cook quickly, they cool quickly, but they should be fully cool before you assemble them. They'll come right off the parchment paper. Oh, that's another thing too. If there's three, Leah, I'm just gonna go really quickly. How do you know when your macarons are done? Number one, the top is stable and does not slide back and forth. Number two, they release easily from the parchment or Silpat. If they don't, they need at least another minute to minute and a half to set that sugar, and you'll have a beautiful foot. That's another indicator as well. All right, and then to assemble them, I really recommend that you work like an assembly line, count them, tops and bottoms, and then flip. Whoops, I just broke that one. I can't do it, you guys, I'm so sorry. But you have your bottoms facing up, your tops facing down, pipe, 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 just to the edge of the macaron, and then just gently put your top on. And that's it. They're really simple. You don't need to pipe. You can spread on the ganache. You can spread on the Nutella, the buttercream, but piping is pretty efficient. However, speaking of efficient, you don't need a tip. You can just cut the bag. If you do use a tip, I usually use an 803 to pipe fillings.
All right. Well, thank you for all of those tips. We are, like I said, nearing the end of our webinar. So I'm going to go ahead and let Colette give us any final thoughts before I let you all know that if your question was not answered, I think we're going to try to get Colette to do a little peek through the chat box and see if she can slide some answers in right after we finish. But please keep coming back for more events like this and keep asking your questions. Be very active in the community. We love it. We know our instructors love to answer your questions. So before I finish us off, once again, Colette, just any final thoughts that you'd like to leave us with at the end of this project?
And well, first, Leah, I will definitely go through the chat and I will answer any questions we didn't get to. So check that box. Macaron shells can be frozen. They freeze beautifully for up to 1 month. And you can freeze them filled if you like, but I think it's more efficient to fill them, freeze the shells, fill, and then chill to set up your filling, and then you're ready to serve. You're ready to serve them. So they freeze well. I think that's about it. I can't think of anything really. I hope I've covered everything. It's just such a pleasure to spend time with you guys and to just talk, at least be able to show you how to mix and pipe the chocolate macaron, which tastes like a brownie. It's like a brownie, and macarons got together and made a beautiful confection.
All right. Well, with that, I am going to say thank you and a farewell to Colette. Thank you so much for showing us all
Please.
steps. Go ahead. All right.
I was just going to say, just to back and say, please join us again. We absolutely love to be with you.
Absolutely. And you're going to get a shot to join us again tomorrow. So before I say goodbye to you, I'm going to run through just a couple reminders so you know where to find us. My name is Leah. I will be with you tomorrow, and we will be doing our day 2 of For the Love of Crafting, 5 Valentine's Day Creations from the Heart mini series. Tomorrow, we're bringing on our sewing expert. Her name is Emily Steffen, and we will be starting our event at 2 p.m. Central Time. Emily is going to be providing her live tutorial on how to make a do-it-yourself zipper lip pouch. So you can download the materials list and the free pattern right now using the link in the description before tomorrow's event. And you can also find the entire mini-series schedule in the video description. Until tomorrow, I hope you're enjoying your day and all of the events this week.